Okay guys, this is the first actual sort of board game I've really played, because I do a lot of video games, so.
So what was your first virtual game that you ever played?
The first game I ever played, many people didn't like it, but I loved this cartoonishly charmed game. The Philips CDI classic, Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon. One of the only games where you actually got to play as Zelda. Now, when I was a kid at school, many of the other kids played the Nintendo version where you played as Link, and I argued for days that it was Zelda, a girl. As I grew older, I realised I was wrong, and they were quite right to put my head in the toilet.
The first ever game that I played was Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins. It was quite a big game for the time because it was on the Game Boy, and I remember never before or since having played something that had such scope and such playing power. You know, that kind of, it never seemed to stop. And then when I finally completed it, I felt like I'd lost something. I felt like, I don't know, it was like a part of myself had gone. And yeah, that was the first game that I ever played, and one of the best.
The first ever game I played was a game on the Sega Mega Drive called Golden Axe 2, so the sequel to the Golden Axe 1 obviously. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, so I didn't really have much experience with games, but this obviously being the first ever game I played, it was special. It was like you get to be these different characters, you got dropped into this magical world, and then all of a sudden you get told, right, go this direction and save the day. Right? So it was a good journey. You got to be different characters: a barbarian, a magic witch, or a little dwarf, where you got to sort of jump between characters and get a little axe go ding ding, and then once in a while you go zoom, slice someone's head off or something. And the sound was a little bit dodgy, but you got like the build of this music. Yeah. Just sorry. Plus, you get to play at 2-player, so you get to play with your mates and things, and go around in a group, defeating all these little, like, thugs or monsters, whatever they were.
So the first game that I ever played was Street Fighter 2, and it was on the Sega Mega Drive. I got into this game when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and it was my dad who introduced me to it. Now, my dad was big into his martial arts, and I think he saw this as an opportunity to get me into it too. And my favourite character was obviously Chun-Li. And we used to play for hours and hours and hours, and then I got a little bit too into it, and then would just walk up to him in the kitchen whilst he's making a cup of tea and just start kicking the crap out of his leg. And that did lead on to him never playing a Street Fighter game again.
So comparatively to everyone else, I'm really old. So I had to really think about what game it was that I first played. And I'm not even sure if this was the first game I played first, but this is Paperboy. And I loved it because you were this cheeky little paperboy and you got to go and chuck papers at people's houses. But it wasn't so much that was fun, it was more missing the place they were supposed to go, like the mailboxes. And you throw them into people's windows and at people's dogs. And all the while you have to dodge all the obstacles, like weird breakdancing people in the middle of the street and random bicycle wheels that just came from behind a garage somewhere, or construction sites and things like that. Absolutely mental, but I thought it was a really, really good game as a kid, and I think it still stands up now as a fun distraction from life.
So my first game that I ever played was Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Mega Drive. It was my sister's, so I could only play it when she wasn't around, which wasn't that often, but oh my god, I absolutely loved Sonic. Although I could never get past Labyrinth Zone, because that countdown when it starts under the water used to terrify me as a kid. So yeah, loved it until Labyrinth Zone. When I got to Labyrinth Zone, wasn't a big fan, but yeah, this is definitely still one of my favourite games, even though it was my first one.
Okay, so I think I was trying to decide, there's like a little collective of the first games I played. I can remember racing a car into a wall in Ridge Racer, jumping out of a plane on MDK, and shooting my dad on GoldenEye, so I don't think they count. So instead, I've gone for Croc, Legend of the Gobbos, which is basically an adorable little crocodile that gets adopted by even more adorable Google-eyed little fuzzballs, and then they get kidnapped, and you have to go and rescue them and become the hero. And that's pretty much all there is to this game, but I think it was the one that really propelled me into, even though it's not an RPG, but it propelled me into wanting to be the hero and save everyone forevermore. So that's my favourite and first.
Oh, Space Invaders, my first ever game. I was a young kid on holiday at Butlins in Barry, Wales, and I kept sneaking off to the corner of the bar where my mum couldn't see me with my 10p's to play this amazing cabinet of the likes I'd never seen before. These monochromatic, like digitised square aliens walking backwards and forwards to these really simplistic effects. It completely took over my world and introduced me to my favourite hobby. Thank you so much, Space Invaders.
Hi, so the first game I can remember playing is Yars Revenge on the Atari. This was my favourite Atari game. You played a little insect that had to shoot through a barrier in order to destroy a ship that was behind the barrier. The ship could turn into a swirling blade and it could shoot at you. Sometimes you could hide in this little force field in the middle of the screen to avoid the shots that came from the enemy. But the levels got progressively harder and harder, as was the case with Atari games, but just a very addictive game.